With my Boy Scouts, I do something when we go to the, please stand up again. We're going to do one more thing. We do one thing to kind of get people going, right? We have this big thing where we're saying, hey, we can take stuff in. We're absorbing things now, right? Well, as Boy Scouts, they run around with their heads cut off, right? So it's kind of, we have to get people kind of to what they want to do. Well, we go up on the Appalachian Trail and we do long hikes, right? Well, there's bears up on the Appalachian Trail. So we have to explain to people kind of a little bit of things that go on with bears, right? So the one thing that we do is we want them to be open to new things, right? Like we were talking about. So I want you guys to all do that one more time, right? When a bear is around and it looks aggressive to you, the bigger you are, the more scary you are to the bear, right? Because they don't know what they're looking at. The other piece is it's nice to be loud. So to wake everybody up today, we're all going to just go like this and go, ah! So on the count of 3, ready? 1, 2, 3, ah! Right? We're all a little bit more awake, right? So I thought we'd have fun with that. Everybody, please, you can sit down now. Hopefully, you guys won't run into this bear anywhere walking around. It looks kind of friendly to its cub, but not with you guys, right? So who's Roger Hutcheson? A long time ago, I did a lot of work around design thinking and the use of user experience. And based on that, I learned that it's not about the professional side all the time, right? It's truly about who you are as a person that relates to other people and how we should communicate with each other. So I started doing my introductions a little different. I have both the professional side and I have the personal side. So you see a little bit more about me so we might relate to each other. You might want to come up and have a conversation about something that I just mentioned. It starts that collaboration, right? So who is Roger Hutcheson? Well, on the professional side, just like a lot of people, I started out in the Scrum world, right? So I was a Scrum Master. I had my Scrum Master certification, right? I was a product owner. I did my product owner certification, right? Those were very helpful to me at the time, right? At the same time, I was doing a lot of work around user experience. So I got certified in user experience, and that was an incredible adventure that I went on for a year around user experience, right? And then I started being introduced to Kanban, right? And Kanban was something that really I could feel it in myself. So in the last 2 years, year and a half, I've done a lot of work around getting myself knowledgeable in Kanban, right? And so I did the Team Kanban Practitioner. Interestingly enough, I did it after KMP, which was a little bit odd. You usually do that one first, right? I then got my KMP, and then I said, you know, Duke Energy really needs to have people that can train their people in Kanban. We need to know the right things. We need to know how to train. So we went and got the accredited trainer. There's 2 of us there now. We're going to have another one going through in June, right? Other side of it is that you can see, I do have some safe background as well, right? And the bottom one is an open certification. So this company was actually mentioned in an earlier discussion, but it's a good company to get general agile information, right? And for my background, what I've looked at is all of those combined is what really makes a difference, right? It's being able to look at it from different pictures and figure out the right thing to talk with people about. So I go in more for agility than I do one way or the other, and then we figure out what the conversation is. I will admit I'm very weighted toward Kanban now because I see how powerful it is, but if they need to start somewhere else, we'll eventually get there because that's what typically happens, right? On me personally, so I'm a big family person. My beautiful family is there in the top corner. My wife supports everything. She works full-time, and so do I, so we're busy schedule all the time. I have a graduating senior in high school. That's my son, and I have a 14-year-old daughter who looks even older than my son does. This is a little older of a picture. But very much a family person. I'm either with my family or I'm outside. So the other pictures that you see up there is surfing, camping, running in the woods, and bicycle riding. I also played lacrosse through college, so I am a little crazy in general. If you know lacrosse players, we're in Maryland. But in general, I'm very much an outdoor person. So if you don't find me with my family, I'm with my family outside, right? I was told by Duke I had to take 2 other images off of here, and they tell you a little bit about me. The reason I had to take them off is because I don't have the rights, or Duke doesn't have the rights to present the material, right? Just saying them's not a problem, right? I said I was a Boy Scout leader, so I typically have a Boy Scout symbol up here, and the reason that's there is they are focused on the oath and law, right? Those things have meaning to me. If you know anything about Boy Scouts, you know a little bit more about how I would intake things. So coming and having a conversation may mean something different now that you know I've got a Boy Scout background, right? The other side of it that I don't have up here is I have an Ironman symbol that sits on there as well. So like our famous hiker, I think he's actually taken off, unbelievable hike that he just took, 250 miles, right? I have done a lot of triathlons in my life, and I can't do them anymore. I have a bad shoulder, but I have done them all the way up to 140.6 miles. And just like he said, it takes massive dedication and discipline to get through those pieces, right? So another thing about me that you can tell, if I have a desire for something, I'm going to be very disciplined and I'm going to be very dedicated to getting those things done, right? And so a little bit more about me, right? Who I am on a personal side and a little bit about where I come from, right? From an agile side. So hopefully that will help you there. The next thing I want to do is I want to know a little bit about the room, because I don't really know where to go with everything that I'm going to discuss today unless I know who's in the room, right? And I have a pen up here. I'm just going to write some numbers. You guys that have been around Kanban, you've seen this before. If you haven't seen these, you will see a little bit more about them now, right? So who's in the room? I got a few questions. Who is an individual consultant on your own that's in the room? So by a raise of hands, who's an individual consultant? Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we got 6. I'll change this in a minute. So who works for a startup? Anybody in the room work for a startup? 1. Okay, 1. Okay. All right. Who works for a medium-sized business? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7. All right. All right, last one. Who works for a large business? The majority. About 20, maybe? I think that looks about right. 15 or 20? I'll just put 15. All right? All right. So that tells me a little bit about the dynamic of the room. If we position this into a histogram, I now see who I should be speaking to in certain ways, and I have a better understanding of how I might work with people when I talk to them. The other piece will help me even more. Why is it not coming up? It's okay. It's because my WAN stuff is... There it is. Got it. All right. So who's a KCP or an AKT in the room? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Great. Who's a KMP? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11. All right. Who's a TKP? Yep. Okay. All right. And who has no formal LKU training at this point? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. All right. So this one tells me a lot. And I will draw a picture for anybody who hasn't seen a histogram like this before. It actually shows me kind of where my scale is and helps me know that this is the majority on here. And it's important for me because those are people that haven't gone through formal training. So if I walk through something that's confusing to you tonight, you may not have seen it before, right? So hopefully I'll explain some of that as I go through, right? And then we've got another number over here that helps me understand that too, right? I also know we have no low knowledge, right? So we've got that there. All right, so that helps me quite a bit. All right, on the next one, who's Duke Energy? Well, we are a big company, right? So 76 million retail electric customers in 6 states, right? Very big company. Approximately 49,500 megawatts of electricity in the Carolinas, Midwest, and Florida alone. So lots of assets delivering nuclear power and other types of power out into our nice grid that keeps it so we have the lights on, just like this building here, right? Commercial business, we own lots of things around the commercial side, both in North America as well in other parts of the world, especially around renewables. So we're doing things with power and solar and other aspects, right? Most important thing is that this big company, right, in its statement, and this is directly out of our yearly statements, we are transforming our customers' experience, modernizing our energy grid, generating cleaner energy, and expanding our natural gas infrastructure to create smarter energy for the future of our customers. Transforming, right? Huge word in our industry, right? transforming. It comes out everywhere inside of our company. 2019, we have about 5 different pieces that are connected to the transforming initiatives within Duke Energy, right? That means lots of changes. That's where Kanban is really important. Other agile methods are really important, so we're doing the right thing at the right time, right? The reason for this is there are companies that are out there that look at a company like Duke Energy, even though it's a big, huge conglomerate that actually does very, very well in what we do, right? They want to buy us if we're not modernizing our company, right? They're out there, they're real. So why are we doing what we're doing? Why are we transforming? Is because we could not be Duke. I surely want my kids to work at Duke. It'd be a great thing, right? All of those things we're trying to make happen at Duke Energy. So there's a little bit about who is Duke Energy, right? What is a Kanban system accelerator? Well, Kanban system accelerator started as an experiment, right? Basically, we were trying to see the predictability of how we could mature Kanban teams or Kanban systems within our company, right? So we started this experiment of utilizing this knowledge that we have and trying to figure out, can we become predictable in delivering this using our own methodologies? Right? So what has it evolved into? Well, it's evolved into an enterprise process used within Duke Energy's Agile Capability Center. That's who I work for. Sorry about that, guys. To implement Kanban consistently, right? And mature service delivery efficiently, right? Not just about predictability of mature Kanban systems. That was our first starting experiment, right? But it's evolved into a place where it's about the implementation with Kanban consistently. So we're the same in our organization. We're doing the right things with the right message, right? To mature service delivery efficiently. Everybody might be in different places. We may not get to the Kanban system right away, but how do we mature them down that path, right? So that's what it's evolved into, right? Where does this concept come from? I said I'm part of the Boy Scouts, right? Anybody else in the room done anything with Boy Scouts? A few people. Well, if you've been involved with the Boy Scouts before, you've probably heard of something called the EDGE method, right? EDGE method is a way to teach boys to teach other boys. So Boy Scouts is a boy-led program, right? And our goal is to get it so that they're the ones teaching, not the leaders, right? And so they have a great concept called EDGE. It stands for educate or explain, demonstrate, guide, and enable, right? This concept is what started me thinking this can be used to help us actually take Kanban and get it to a different mature state, right? So I started thinking, how can I use EDGE? How can I start to actually see this concept and get it so that we're using it in a better way? And that's really how the accelerator started to mature on its own. Knowing what Kanban systems are, right? And helping the maturity model of those, I'm using EDGE to try to get there. And I'll walk through that for you guys. All right? So all great models have purpose, values, and core practices, right? Has any model out there ever not had these things, right? So I figured I had to have them if it's a starting point, so I put that into my system as well. And I basically have my purpose. Enable understanding of a Kanban system so services deliver value predictably and evolve continuously, right? Deliver value predictably and evolve continuously, right? How do we get that to happen, right? We don't only stuck like this picture up at the top where this person's frustrated, right? We want to do something where our system flows, it understands each other, and we're happy about the results that it's giving us, right? The next piece, the values, understanding, right? We're going to be a group of people. We need to understand kind of where we're going, what method we're using. It's all about everybody understanding where we are and what we're doing, right? And committing to some of those pieces. Being focused, right? All good practices. We want to make sure that we're focusing in on the pieces that we need to do. It's going to be very collaborative in nature because that's Kanban, that's agility in general, right? We want an experimental approach, just like our last presentation talked about. You have these experiments that you try. Those are very important to the continuous improvement of what you're doing, right? If we're not thinking scientific method, we need to start doing that on a regular basis, right? Everyone's going to be enabled. Right? We don't want people to be actually thinking that they're stuck somewhere. We want teams to actually be self-supported, right? Those teams will be very much supported as well by coaching and also by the organization, right? We're going to use analytics to make good decisions, right? We all know, and we've seen some of that today, how we can actually transform organizations and where we're going by looking at the data of our delivery, right? So we're going to be working down that path. Right. So time limit of practices. So this is, as it's evolved, we've actually shrunk this down a little bit. So there's 4 practices now. That we have a discovery phase. That's not part of Edge, right? But discovery is so important to what we do up front for anything. We have a discovery period. That's about a month long, right? Each company can be a little different there, but we're using a month for ours, right? And that's any upfront meetings that are taking place to gather the information that we need to help us get to a better starting point to create a Kanban system, right? And I'll walk through some of that here in a minute, right? Interactive experience. One thing that I've seen missing all the time, and it happened at Duke as well, they had me educate 72 teams at Duke Energy on Kanban, right? Well, there was no time for coaching 72 teams. There was no time for interaction with those people to really get things to work. This aspect is one of the most important pieces of the concept. We have to dedicate time to these groups to mature them down the right path and make sure they're doing things in a way that gets them to a continuous improvement area. Right? Does that make sense? Right? Then there's an Enablement Month, right? You see that interactive experience has pieces of the Edge model. Enable is the other one. After we get to a point where coaching should not be the focus, we want to enable them by observing and giving feedback and being there to support, but they're running on their own. They're doing it hands-on, and they're getting it where they need to take it, right? And then evaluation, right? It's really important. We need to evaluate, right? Did we get to where we needed to in a quarter, right? So I've got a month, 1 quarter. Did we actually get to the spot where their objectives were what were being approved? And we'll talk through that a little bit, all right? All right, so the discovery piece. This goes into some details. So I think we're going to send all these out. So I think someone asked me if I could get the presentation to them, so you guys will get it. But some areas in here. Leadership readiness, right? Do they have an understanding of the purpose for the change that they're going through, right? Really important, right? Agreement of agility path, right? Are they in agreement that they want to go down the roads that we're going down, right? We do a quick assessment to choose methods and talk about that a little bit, about what framework, what method they might want to use if they're not right front fit for one versus another, right? We get commit to support the initiative itself, right? So, and this is from leadership themselves, right? We don't want to have people that report to somebody else that hasn't committed to the initiative that we're working on, right? Team readiness, very important, right? Agreement of the agility path again, very, very important. They're ready to go, they understand it, we want to know who's our supporters, and they're excited to go down that path, right? Right? We want to define their current roles, right? We talk about skills metrics and things like that. Those are very important as we start to get into things. The more information like this we can get up front, the easier we can move them through some of the future phases, right? Determine the skill set gaps is another piece, right? Where they might be gapping based on the team that exists today, right? And then customer readiness, right? That's a really important piece, right? Who are they supporting, right? Are they ready to actually have a change where they might have to work differently with this group and they agree and commit to that, right? What expectations are there? Determining that communication path that you might have with people, right? Right? Next thing we want to specifically do is define mission, vision, and purpose, right? Without purpose, we go nowhere, right? Very important that we understand what is their purpose, what are they going down, what are they delivering it, and how are they doing that today, right? With that, we use OKRs, or we're starting to. It's more of an initiative on my side, but we're starting to use OKRs, or objectives and key results, at Duke Energy, and that's going to leadership and getting yearly, and then working quarterly with our service delivery team to set some specific objectives so they are committed to their own objectives, right? The one thing that I've found really important is determine value delivery map, right? Your value stream, right? Very similar thought process. What is the steps to deliver your work, right? If we can get that up front before we do any education with them, we can have a really good kickstart to what they're doing, right? The next piece, right? That demand and capability, right? If we can get good data up front of what this service is doing today, we can also kickstart this team, right? If it's done afterwards, sometimes it takes longer to mature. So the more we can get data from past delivery, the better off we are, right? So we work very diligently to see what data we can capture so that we can help with that as we go into their education phase, all right? Some examples, so you can see this. I wanted you to see some of the things that we have been able to discover at Duke Energy. And so one was a current value delivery map. This is actually for our marketing department. It was done by a design services group, and it is a very valuable thing. It was actually done before I got there, but really quickly was presented to me as something that was a starting point for how we deliver the work, right? Next piece is past lead time and capability, right? We were able to actually see what they were delivering and when, right? And we were also break down some of the types of work this group was doing. So when we went to work with them as a workshop, we had some foundational root from a data standpoint that we could mature and figure out how we were going to deal with it, right? Very good to get us to a different place, right? Right, so interactive experience. This is when we start working directly hand in hand with everybody on the team, right? It's not just the actual leadership or people fostering the change. It's now we're talking to everybody in the service itself, right? And so things that we do there, we do a 2-day Kanban workshop, and we are using certifications for that. So we're doing TKP on day 1. I've worked with Lean Kanban University to have it so that the right material is covered in that class so that it counts for the first day of KMP1 or Kanban system design. And then we take people that are actually going to be maturing the system itself and fostering that work with them to be in the second day. And they now go through a 2-day workshop that they get this information, and I'll walk through that a little bit more with you. But they are certifications, and it is being done through Lean Kanban University today. Right? Demonstrations of all the cadences. We want to make sure that they see them. It's not something you just explain and they can't actually feel them with someone who knows what they should look like, right? The next thing we do is we observe and we debrief, right? All of those cadences that we've talked to them before, how can we watch from the back of the room, listen carefully, let them make any mistakes that they make, and then coach on the back end, right? Because they learn better when they see both ways. We're now doing that edge model, right? We're demonstrating and we're guiding, right? So there's the education, the demonstration, and the guiding, right? All right. So the 2-day workshop, as I mentioned, we're doing Team Kanban Practitioner. This doesn't work for everybody when it comes to Get Kanban, but at Duke Energy, the Get Kanban game has changed people's lives, right? So we use the Get Kanban game in that first day with TKP, and it's been very, very valuable. Once we walk people through that game, they have a whole different understanding of how to deal with WIP limits, what it should look like, what work management's all about. They get a better picture quicker, right? The next piece that we do is we do the Kanban system design with a smaller set of people, right? So we do the XIT case study, and then we walk through static, right? And then the most important thing, we determine best Kanban starting point. They may not be at a Kanban system at this point. They may be at personal WIP limits. We don't know until we walk through it. The more discovery we have, the better off our ending of our workshop could be, and the closer to a system we might be, right? But in general, we walk through those 2 certifications and we determine a good starting point, right? The one thing that I do want to say, and it's learned from hardship, right? We learned by those 72 teams that I talked about that going out there and educating, right? And then not really getting involved with them seriously after that takes Kanban gives it to them, and then the maturity takes years, right? Because they don't know where they are. It takes too long, right? So we do this very pointed with the discovery work that we've been doing, right? The next piece, right? We're working one-on-one. I have found this to be the most invaluable part of what we do, right? I don't know about you guys. Raise your hands on coaching. Who is a coach in their organization, right? A few people in the room, right? So it's interesting. You know, our job is to work ourselves out of a job, right? I mean, it is. Be in reality, as a coach, if you're not working yourself out of your job, right, then you're not coaching because you're not maturing people, right? So I look at it very hard every day that I mature people, and I'm doing that through what I do every day. If I take myself out of there, I'm still valuable because I need to be moved to another spot, right? So I'm looking to mature all the time. So the idea of going in there for a very specific time box of a month and demonstrating all the cadences, working with them hand in hand with the groups that we're working on, maturing the structures that they started with from the workshop and getting them to another level has been invaluable. I mean, it's unbelievable that the information that we've been able to take in a short period of time and get teams through, right? That marketing group that I talked about earlier, they were all ones in the histogram. They had no knowledge of Kanban going into it other than I've heard the name, right? They're the furthest along team in the shortest period of time that I've ever used because they were dedicated to getting movement and that they've had good coaching going after it, right? The bigger part also is the observing and getting to places where you're evolving metrics and figuring out how you're using metrics within your system. Right? Collaboration, right? The team collaboration. This aspect is so important, and we're a coach, we're there to coach, but our KMPs or our Kanban system design people that have come out as the KMP ones, we want them working with their teams. So it's not us fostering that as a coach and doing all that demonstration. We help and we're there hands-on with them, but it's about them collaborating and working with their team. Unbelievably important, right? Because they're going to be working together real time, right? That service delivery manager, that service request manager, those people actually that would have been in the KMP1, they're actually the ones doing the evolving of their team from the level that they start with to the next stage and hopefully getting to a Kanban system, right? But we want them to be fostering and us helping them do that, right? Shouldn't be on the coach, right? In this stage, we're building team agreements. We're getting to that Kanban system. If we can do it as a tool like JIRA or do it physical, we want to make sure we're visualizing and getting the system built, WIP limits, the whole aspect going through using static. Right? Some pictures so you can see it. So this group was actually 50 people all at one time. This was the first day, and this was pictures of the game, but they got this education. They did the Get Kanban game. It was very powerful, right? Like I said, that group was all ones, right? They hadn't really had any training. They didn't know what Kanban was. Within a day, they had a whole different understanding of where they were going, right? All right. Some other pieces around the interactive experiences. This top piece is pictures of identifying sources of dissatisfaction, both internal and external. So they had roadmaps to be able to continuously improve from. What places could they target, right? I love this bottom piece, define and mature Kanban cadences, because sometimes we don't know exactly where to start. So we're taking that initial I guess, aggressive approach and not setting meetings. We're looking at their existing meetings, defining how we're getting them to a different place, seeing what meetings can maybe be a service delivery review so it's not obtrusive to them, right? So all of those are maturing that until we get to a place where we're using all the terms that they may have learned in their training, right? This is actually, remember the picture back here? I'll show it to you real quick. This picture right here, that's the advertising, brand, and creative development cycle. That right there, in less than 3 weeks, evolved to look something like that. All right? And it was the actual team themselves that went through the training, that worked with each other, with a coach's assistant to get them to a whole different place with a different workflow. Right? Right. So the month of enablement, this is an interesting one, right? And I do want to point something out here. I think I didn't do it on this one. Yeah, right here. This piece, it says focus on collaboration and KMP1's facilitation. Right, I'll walk through that a little bit, but I just wanted to reiterate that it's all about that collaboration, right? And it's all about the facilitation by a person that's part of the structure, not the outside coach. Really trying to be the teaching from the back of the room most of the time, right? Get that focus to be on them getting themselves better because they'll evolve it because they own it, right? The next one has a similar view to it, right? This is the Enablement Month. This is when the coach steps back and comes in on request, We may listen on some calls and things like that, but in general, we want to be invited in and we can help with things that they're struggling with. But in this month, we're also focused on that continuous improvement, but it's about the self-sufficiency, right? Do we see them being self-sufficient enough after this month period so that they are continuously improving on their own, doing the cadences correctly, and actually seeing results from it, right? Because we don't want to walk away if they're not actually getting to where they need to, right? So in this month, we're there to observe, to see if that's taking place, right? Right. Some things that we've seen happen in these periods of time. We use JIRA. The top piece is an evolved workflow from a very simple workflow of here's our backlog, I've got in progress and I've got done, to it has ready states for work going through. So we have the ability to actually see where our WIP might be, right? What stages it's in. All the columns are limited by WIP, so they do have a system in place. The one thing that I will say about a lot of the structures, like earlier today, the system may not be fully complete, right? We're discovering, because of need, downstream effects, right? And making good connections to those downstreams so that we can actually get them also evolved. So now the whole system starts evolving as well. And that's also happening upstream, right? The bottom piece down here is a mature service flow, and that's where you start seeing some more specializations around using a tool to help you actually see your true workflow and make the team efficient, right? Another example here is we've been doing a lot around system health, and we've got a number of pieces done in Power BI, which is a Microsoft tool, to take JIRA data and actually show the correct Kanban information that we want them to see. So on this page, it's just showing the system health tab, and it's showing your average customer lead time, your average system lead time. It gives you a histogram. We're working on the probability piece of that. That's something that we're working on today. And it also shows you WIP. This picture is incorrect. It's green on the done, so it shows you a little bit better of a picture there. Right? The evaluate side, and we're kind of coming to the end of the system itself, but the idea of evaluation is so important. Where are people? They started at one level, right? I knew they started at ones, right? They were very new to everything. When we get to that evaluation stage, we don't want to be subjective from Duke Energy as the coaching staff. We actually want to be as unsubjective as possible. So we do two things. We use something called Comparative Kanban. David, I think you've worked with them, the Comparative Agility group. I thought they referenced that you had worked with them. If I'm mistaken, they're using your name. Yeah.
I don't recall the name, but sometimes companies rebrand themselves.
Gotcha.
Or I might know the individual, but not the company.
Gotcha. But there's a thing, it's out there, the survey company is called Comparative Agility. They've created a comparative Kanban that's part of theirs. It's specific Kanban questions, so it's not confusing to people that are working in a different type of method, right? And it has been very effective for getting a non-subjective view. So we get something that's outside of us as Duke Energy. We do the other as well. We have a maturity model, and we've built that maturity model based on working and reading through the maturity model from Kanban, as well as it's a maturity model that works with some of our other practices, but the Kanban piece had focus around the Kanban maturity model book. We then review with service delivery team. So we do these two pieces, and then we get everybody back together and review the data so we can figure out where to take them next. And depending on where they are, we discover what those next steps are going to be at this point, right? For us at Duke Energy as a coaching group, we're looking at being at a level 3. Both in comparative Kanban as well as in the maturity model, to say that you, hey, without any trouble, will separate from a coach, right? And then we come in quarterly and see how they're doing. But in general, we're looking for their agreement where they are and us to also agree that that's where they are, right? And then we'll help them very pointedly to work on those items. Right? So if we see these things, we'll go really specific and start working on them, right? And again, the goal here, focus on Kanban maturity, right? It's all about getting people to do better, right? So whatever we can do to get them even past where they are today, right? And that kind of goes through that evolution of that edge model, right? And some examples. So this is the comparative agility, so that you can see it. It's a survey. In comparative Kanban, it does a section on visualization. It does a thing on limiting whip policy. So it takes the practices and breaks them down into questions and gives you a pretty good view of where they are. What's nice about the comparative agility model is they both give you inside of Duke, right? So we can compare everybody inside of Duke. We can also compare Duke against the world, right? So whoever uses a survey, we can make comparisons that way. Our goal is not to actually have any ramifications from this evaluation. It is all about where are they and how can we coach them better, right? The next one is our model. Again, like I said, it's subjective because we created the questions using good documentation, but at the same time, it's us evaluating it. So as a person, we may have a bias toward one thing or another when they answer the question, so that's why we have 2 of them, right? I did go through it relatively quickly. Anybody got a time check on me?